Microsoft's relationship with OpenAI, it's complicated, to say the least. Sometimes collaborators, sometimes competitors, the two increasingly offer overlapping services. So how should a customer choose between, say, OpenAI's ChatGPT and Microsoft's own Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat? We will be exploring that topic in today's episode. Welcome to the Directions on Microsoft Briefing podcast. I'm Mary Jo Foley, the editor-in-chief here at Directions. I'm your host for the series of podcasts for those interested in the Microsoft Enterprise IT ecosystem. Today, I'm joined by our newest Directions analyst, David Berry. David specializes in SharePoint and Microsoft 365. He spent 25 years as a solution architect and advisor, consulting with Fortune 1000, government, and nonprofit clients on enterprise deployments and migrations. As a developer, he first worked with the beta for SharePoint 2001 and later participated with Microsoft on the precursor to SharePoint Online. Welcome, David. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks, Mary Jo. It's great to be here.
So before we start chatting about chat, I wondered if you wouldn't mind talking a bit about yourself. What are you going to be covering here at Directions? I don't even know. And how does your previous work experience, as well as the community work that I know you do, play into how you're going to be approaching topics here at Directions?
Sure. So for Directions, I'm primarily covering SharePoint and its related technologies, as well as M365 Copilot and some other AI technologies.
Okay.
As for my experience, when I was consulting, I was in the field working with clients to solve their problems. I dealt with a wide range of real-world challenges using SharePoint and other Microsoft technologies that I can bring to my analysis.
Okay.
As for the community, Microsoft community was a big part of my experience. I started back in the day running the caparea.net SharePoint group and speaking at SharePoint Saturdays. Today, I'm a community lead for Microsoft Certified Trainer Program, and I'm speaking more at community events.
Nice.
It's a great way to share what I've learned and to learn from others. Going forward, I think this community around Microsoft is going to play a very important role in helping me stay plugged into what people are dealing with during this age of rapid change with AI. So I also encourage anyone listening to get involved as well.
Yeah, I've been to SharePints before, those community meetups. Those are fun.
They are indeed.
They're very fun. And I feel like, it's kind of a cliche, but I feel like the SharePoint community is one of the most active Microsoft communities of all the communities for some reason.
Well, I think it is too. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's a collaboration platform and there's a lot to know about SharePoint, and that's pretty much how I feel the community naturally evolved.
Yeah, and I think Jeff Teeper, who has been instrumental in SharePoint, is a big part of it too, because he's very much a community guy, right?
Yes, he is. He and what Microsoft has done to support the community at large has been remarkable.
Nice. Well, speaking of community, I know you just got back from the Microsoft 365 Community Conference in Las Vegas, and you went there on Directions' behalf. So I was watching that from afar a bit, just watching it on social media, and it seemed like there were a lot of announcements there and a lot of, yet again, community spirit. So I was wondering if there are any big takeaways or observations about the themes that you could share with us. I know AI is going to be the not so surprising star, but anything else that kind of popped out to you when you were there?
Yeah, absolutely. To your point, I don't think there were any real big surprises along those lines. It was AI, Copilot, and Agent were definitely, the topics of choice for many of the sessions. That said, with over 200 sessions available, people could pretty much find something about anything that they were looking for. So it was a wide variety. I think for me, a couple of the call outs I noted was the security keynote that was delivered there. They had 3 formal tracks, communications, small and mid-sized businesses and teams. And then I think the third one is the keynote, regarding the frontier firm, which was, fascinating to hear. I think, the keynote was important because it was the first of its kind at this conference, and I thought it was great to showcase.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to have seen more security sessions to kind of follow up with what the keynote was.
What is a frontier firm? I've heard them use those terms, but I don't even really understand what that means.
Yeah, so the frontier firm is a new vision, I would call it, of modern work,
Okay.
dominated by agents, and introducing, the role of the agent boss. And
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
this is the concept where people will be managing agents as much as they may be managing other people.
Mm.
So there's a lot to unpack there,
There
which
is.
probably could be a topic of another section
Definitely.
altogether.
Yep.
But yeah, it was. It's interesting, to keep an eye on what it's actually talking about. Jared Spataro brought up a new business, startup business that was about AI, was using AI natively to run the business as well as its product. And it was really interesting to hear that in their time of existence, they kept their headcount flat as they grew. And that was due to the AI tooling that they brought into the company itself. So,
Interesting. Yeah, when I heard that whole idea that we're going to be managing agents, all I could think was I wasn't too good when I've managed people during my career, so I wonder if I'll be better at managing agents. Probably not.
it'll be something we all have to see and potentially deal with.
It's true. Okay, let's talk about something you worked on since you've been at Directions. I got to read a couple iterations of this, and I thought it was a super interesting report. You looked at ChatGPT versus Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. And I think a lot of our listeners and our readers and our members are going to be very interested in this topic. So I wondered if you could explain to start, what is Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat? That name is very unwieldy, and I know that technology has undergone a lot of positioning changes and naming changes over the past years. So maybe let's start with you just explaining what is Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat.
Yeah, it's definitely a mouthful, right? So, in a nutshell, M365 Copilot Chat evolved from an earlier offering called Bing Chat Enterprise. And then it was rebranded as part of an effort by Microsoft to align to the Copilot brand. And also to reposition it more with M365 itself. So I think, Microsoft probably made a smart move doing that towards the rebranding and including it with M365 subscriptions at no additional cost. I thought, it kind of indicated the support for the direction Microsoft was going by placing a big bet on its bigger brother, M365 Copilot, which is a little bit slow to be adopted, at least by Microsoft's expectations. So this could be seen as a way to give people a stepping stone to bring more customers on board towards using M365 Copilot.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, it's kind of like their freemium tier in a way, right? Like get you hooked on that and then say, hey, if you like this, you want to go full on Microsoft 365 Copilot.
It is definitely a consideration there. I think the other key point with something like Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat is how it's positioned against like the shadow AI of people using the free GPT services like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini or anything else that's out there.
Right. I didn't even think about that. Like it's kind of their hedge against those entry level products from other vendors too, right?
Right, it is because it brings to the table, I would probably say a security context that the other services that are free, don't really have.
Okay. All right. I'm going to keep everyone on the edge of their seat and take a break now. So I want to talk about the directions on Microsoft new and improved online platform, Atlas, which is now officially up and running. So if you go to directionsonmicrosoft.com, you will see our updated online platform. Atlas is where we host our in-depth analyst reports on all Microsoft enterprise technologies and licensing. It's where we have our up-to-date infographics, our roadmaps, and it gives you a centralized way to register for webinars and licensing boot camps, all on that platform. So if you are already a Directions member, you are automatically upgraded to Atlas. And if you're not yet a member, you can still check out our blogs and our podcasts, which are open to all and free, by going to directionsonmicrosoft.com/blogs and directionsonmicrosoft.com/podcasts. And while you're on the news site, even if you're not a member, feel free to do a search or two so you can have a sneak peek of all the great Microsoft Enterprise technology and licensing content to which our members do have access. And if you want to learn more about all the content and services we offer, go to directionsonmicrosoft.com/membership. Okay, now back to David and all things chat. Something else that's a little bit confusing about Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat is how enterprise users can access it. There's an app for that, right? But there's other ways to get to it as well. Could you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a bit confusing because there's overlap in the terminology and the apps, both with the licensed version of M365 Copilot, as well as some confusion around the consumer Microsoft Copilot apps. Mm-hmm. So I think I'd like to point out first and foremost that regardless of how they access it, they can use it. Copilot Chat, just like they would any of the free GPT services, but safely within the security boundaries of Microsoft 365, which mm-hmm. I consider a key advantage. But even if they were to upload a file with sensitive information or copy information into a prompt, it doesn't leave the organization, and that's important for people to understand, as well as Microsoft does not use their content to train AI. Mm-hmm. Speaking specifically, though, about the apps, yeah, there's a couple of different ways they can access it. First one is natively in the M365 portal. It used to be BizChat. It's now renamed Copilot Chat, so they have access to the chat interface right there. Mm-hmm. There are also corresponding desktop and mobile apps, as well as being embedded in the Edge browser if you log in with your Entra ID. So lots of different ways to access it. Mm-hmm. There are also chat interfaces embedded with Outlook and Teams, but the thing to keep in mind here is that this is chat only and not the full features they may have heard about that come with M365 Copilot Chat for Outlook, Teams, and the other Office apps.
Right. I think the word chat, it's just unfortunate that that's become the way we talk about all of this, because everything's chat. And like you just said, some of it's protected, some of it's not protected, and there's a lot of gradients, right?
There is, and I think Microsoft, as part of its Wave 2 release, is also, again, kind of renaming it instead of Copilot Chat, just calling it Chat, at least in the right. app interfaces. Mm-hmm. But what the users need to be aware of is there's actually an indicator whether or not you're logged in with your Entra ID in almost all of the apps, and that's a green shield that indicates mm-hmm. Microsoft's enterprise data protection.
Right.
So that's a key differentiator there.
Yeah, I saw that green shield show up and I'm like, okay, I wonder what that is now. I've never seen that before. So as you've been talking about, if you're a Microsoft 365 subscriber, you can get Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat for free as part of your subscription when you sign in with Entra. So if you are that person, is there still any reason to use ChatGPT? Like, are there any advantages to ChatGPT over Copilot Chat? And if you do decide to go with ChatGPT, are there any benefits that you're giving up that you would have had if you used Copilot Chat instead?
Yeah, so it's kind of two levels to that question.
Okay.
I think the first level is as the organization, and the real question there is whether it can trust one solution or the other, or anything that you may be considering with your intellectual property. Mm. That's one of their greatest concerns. So when you consider the security proposition of Copilot Chat, which is essentially free, as you mentioned, against the free version of ChatGPT, it really makes a compelling case to go with M365 Copilot. I think, from a personal level, people are always going to kind of debate what the responses are that they get back from, ChatGPT versus Copilot, and whether or not which one is better. I think ultimately it's kind of a matter of personal choice at that point, just simply because so much goes into the variability of how the prompt was written in the first place.
Sure.
That could influence an answer and how skilled the person entering the prompt is. So it's kind of a challenging question to answer at that level, but the organizations have a greater responsibility than just the quality of the responses. And to that, they need to be considering what the security implications of either solution should be.
That's true. Very true. Okay, so if you're a customer on the fence about going all in still with Microsoft 365 Copilot, which costs $30 per user per month, is Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat a good alternative? In other words, what won't you get if you use Copilot Chat, but not the full Microsoft 365 Copilot?
Yeah, excellent question. I think, part of the answer has to do with what use cases were identified to determine whether or not it's worth moving users over to the full version of Copilot.
And you can mix and match, right? Like some
Yeah,
people could be on
absolutely.
one. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. And that's definitely the other part of it. And again, kind of goes back to the use cases is not everybody may require having the full-on Copilot license. So it's really important to understand where the value proposition is and how it's being used.
Yeah.
I would probably suggest that most typical users in an organization would be fine with Copilot Chat. There's still the opportunity to upload business information into the chat so that you can give it the business context that you may be looking for, and safe within the security context of your organization and M365. So that's pretty valuable from that for many typical users. The more advanced users may find that having the Copilot license, the full-fledged $30 license, is more valuable because of what it is that they're doing and the integration directly into the Office applications such as Word, PowerPoint, Excel, as well as some of the benefits that they get from using Copilot as Teams with regard to the meeting transcripts and some of the features there. So there's definitely advantages which could turn around and justify the $30 license for those users. But it would depend upon making sure the business understands what the value proposition is.
Right. I know that's, I think, a little bit confusing for people because I've seen some say, oh, so with Copilot Chat, I can't use it with my own business information, but that's not really true, right? It's just the level of integration that's different.
Correct, absolutely. So the big difference is M365 Copilot would natively incorporate the business data that is contained within M365 in your organization.
Okay.
So on the back end, it would be, I guess you could say, computing its responses based on access to that information.
Okay.
Whereas from Copilot Chat's perspective, the user would manually have to upload or paste in the business information they were interested in incorporating into the response.
Right. So with Copilot Chat, you might not even know about a document somewhere that Copilot would find.
That is possible, yes.
Yeah. I'm thinking in a good way, not in a nefarious way, but I guess both ways, right?
So, I mean, enterprise search is still available for those types of situations. And, if they find it, then they can put it into the Copilot Chat.
Okay, cool. All right. Anything else you'd like to add that you think our listeners might find helpful when they're trying to evaluate ChatGPT versus Copilot Chat?
Yeah, I think I would just like to mention that the impetus for this was really more about organizations and shadow AI right now. AI, people are using and will use AI for work, and organizations that are slow to identify a solution are going to run a risk. People are going to want to leverage the new toys and arguably find better ways of working, and businesses don't necessarily want them going outside of the organizational boundary to do that. So it's not just about which service produces a better response or has more features, but whether or not the data is secure as it's being done. So while we may have a personal favorite, organizations have to consider the broader implications of a technology and its overall strategy.
Right.
I think three keys to this are simply define your use cases, evaluate security capabilities, and probably most importantly, educate and train your users.
I like the term shadow AI. I hadn't heard that. I've heard shadow IT, but I hadn't heard it applied directly to AI. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's definitely becoming more mainstream, I would probably say, based on some of the things that I've been reading about. And it's an important thing to be aware of. People
Definitely.
will use AI, and it's freely available. So
Very true. All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much, David. And we're really glad to have you on board here at Directions.
my pleasure. Thank you.
I want to remind our listeners they can find lots more coverage of all things Microsoft related on directionsonmicrosoft.com. Thank you so much for listening. If you have questions, comments, or any topics that you'd like to hear our Directions analysts cover in one of these podcasts, please do not hesitate to contact me via X or Blue Sky. We at Directions have converged our existing social media channels onto a single platform, so give us a follow at Directions MSFT on X or Directions on Microsoft on Blue Sky to keep up with all of the latest Microsoft enterprise, product, and licensing information. Thanks again.